Welcome back to this edition of Vikings Now, and your Vikings are now no longer undefeated. Jim Rich along with Pierre Nugent. Detroit Lions come in here, hand the Vikings a 31-29 loss, and there is a lot of fans finger pointing, Pierre, at what went wrong with this one. By the way, we saw in the comments you guys did not enjoy the desks, thought we were too crowded on the old one, so we spent the money during the bye week.
Is that what they said?
Went out and blew some glass and made this nice top, so we hope you enjoy this with your viewing pleasure. All right, Pierre, where do you assess the damage for this loss?
First and foremost, it makes sense as to why I'm not getting paid this week because of this desk, because it looks like I know where the money is going at this point. So, to be honest, when you look at this game and the way it was played, this was about as dead even of a heat as I've seen in quite some time, especially if you look at the totals from the numbers across the boards. Only 8 yards separated each team in total yards. Each team committing 8 penalties. Each team 4-10 on third down. Each team 1-1 in the turnover department. So they broke even there. I mean, this is about as close as it gets, so I'm not sure if I really... That's why I raised my eyebrows a little bit when I heard you say people are finger pointing. I said,
do you want
the finger pointing to what?
Do you want me to tell you a few that I've already read?
Please, go ahead.
The 3rd and 4. Why were we throwing the ball on a 3rd and 4?
Late in the game, you mean, yes. Okay.
All the finger pointing to this point is at the end of the game. Okay. Darnold's interception was a bad throw, a bad decision. You'll see it later if you haven't seen it already. Aaron Jones was waving his hands over on the opposite side and could have easily picked up a good chunky yardage there. He didn't see him there and threw that pass that was late, going to Justin Jefferson, I believe it was. And that was a problem for some fans. And also the last drive, okay? You had the ball, and all you had to do was get a couple of first downs, and you're out of there with a win. That's talking about closing games, something that the Vikings have been so good at up until today. And I think that's where people are looking, going like, man, you did a 3 and out at the worst possible time. You punt the ball away, and then the defense gives up chunk yardage on 3 consecutive plays to the back, and they end up close enough for that field goal.
Well, I'm a little confused as to what, maybe not what you want from me, but what the people out there watching want from me. Am I supposed to Chicken Little it now and claim the sky is falling because they didn't close one game out of 6 they've played so far when they played great football all season? And am I supposed to just light my hair on fire just because they lost to the Lions, who very well could be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl this year? I'm not going to freak out over this loss. I know that's what I tend to do when we talk about other teams in particular who shall remain nameless.
That's, I think, why they most jump in to view this.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, the one area that I think concerned me a little bit, and concern I think is a little bit of a loose term, but I thought, especially in the first half, that second quarter in particular, I thought the Vikings were out-physicaled in a lot of the game, particularly in that first half. The Vikings were really met their match in terms of a physicality standpoint at the line of scrimmage. And now you see what happens when this team runs against a team that has a stout offensive line, that has stout wide receiver corps, weapons at every single turn like the Lions had. I know a lot of people might point to the Houston Texans and say, well, look at what they did to Houston. They've got weapons all over the field. But I don't think Houston's offensive line is as good as Detroit's offensive line, especially when you look back to the touchdown that Amon-Ra St. Brown scored in that second quarter that made it 14-10. That cover 0 look that was met with no problem. Everybody was on assignment for the Detroit Lions on that play. And you leave Amon-Ra St. Brown one-on-one down the field, touchdown Lions. And that's the point of contention where I think a lot of people, when they look back at the film, are going to say, whoa, this is a team that somehow found a way to, yes, I know the Vikings got 4 sacks on the day. They got to Jared Goff from time to time. But I think in terms of a physicality standpoint, I think the Lions were the more physical team today, and we saw that in the run game as well, with Detroit carrying it for, 144 total yards running the ball, and Jahmyr Gibbs was absolutely sensational, averaging nearly 8 yards a carry. That's something we haven't seen all season long from the Vikings. They were the team that either second or third, if memory serves me correct, in total rushing against in the NFL.
Yeah, Baltimore was number 2 coming in.
Baltimore is the only team that's been better all season long against the run than the Vikings. So today, The Vikings got punched in the mouth a little bit. Good learning experience for them, I think. But I'm not going to freak out over this one. The only reason why it stings more is because it's a divisional opponent.
Yeah, well, these are the ones, if you were going to be the team that represents the NFC, these are the ones you need to win.
I think that's fair.
And not let the defending division champs win. The Vikings now have lost 4 straight to Detroit. That hasn't happened since 1963.
Wow.
I mean, the Vikings have just kicked the Lions back and forth. It always, when we talked to Chuck Foreman, and he used to play them back in the day, he would look at the schedule and goes, okay, there's those 2 wins, and just move on from there because the Lions were always a mess. But this has now changed under Dan Campbell. And you talk about what went wrong. I think a lot of that toughness or maybe strength of the defense was missing when you go with Ivan Pace Jr., who's much more smaller in stature compared to Blake Cashman,
who did not play today.
I think Cashman out with the turf toe. I think that really affected the run defense. He's the Vikings' leading tackler, I think, by far, and is part of the reason why they've only allowed an average of 67 yards rushing against coming into this. And so I think with Cashman out of there, I think that was an issue. The thing that is kind of perplexing to me, because again, we don't know the schemes that Brian Flores was putting in, but he had Detroit completely flummoxed in that first quarter. The first series, granted, the Lions had to have a replacement in their lineman, and he took consecutive holding penalties, backed him up. So then Campbell tries to fire up the team by going for it on a fake field goal. That blows up in his face. Boom, you're up 7-0. Darnold should have finished it off instead of just the 10-0. They should have got another touchdown there. So you could have been up by 14 because field goals do not win you games, unless, of course, they're at the final horn. But you have to get those points when they're there, because then all of a sudden Detroit goes, okay, we did nothing in this first quarter. I'm changing this. I'm changing that. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And they scored on 5 consecutive possessions against Flores' vaunted defense.
All season long, we haven't seen the Vikings give up really 21 points in a single game for a few of those games, and we saw them giving up 21 and a quarter.
Right.
That was really certainly something that was very alarming. But I go back to what I said originally in terms of the trench play. I think that was the difference in the game. If you go back and you look at the Jahmyr Gibbs first touchdown run that made it 10-7, guys were getting blown off the line. I mean, just absolutely blown off the line. Big hole was there for Jahmyr Gibbs, and we let a talented back like him in the open field. He's going to make you pay, and he did just that. Again, I go back to the Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown that made it 14-10, where the protections were perfect for Detroit. So that to me is where the game was lost today, was in the trenches. And I feel that's where really the difference was made, because, again, I'm going back to my original point. Detroit was the more physical team. I think that
So is that a concern?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if I'd call it a concern, but it is something that if I'm Kevin O'Connell, I'm going into the film room tomorrow, I'm thinking to myself, hey guys, you know what? We need to be a little bit more like that team. Because that team was able to blow us off the ball at the line of scrimmage from time to time. That team really made us suffer, allowing 4 sacks on the upside. We haven't even talked about the Lions' defense, which did a pretty good job today as well for the most part. But I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned yet. But I do think that if you're the Vikings, and if you're the Vikings players, and if you're the Vikings coaching staff, I do think that you are looking at today's performance, even though you played well in most phases, you're not at Detroit's level right now. You're not. I don't think they are. I don't think they're at Detroit's level. I think they lack the explosiveness in offense that Detroit has, even though, when you look at the final numbers, I know Amon-Ra St. Brown got his 8 catches on the day, but the second leading receiver on the day was Jahmyr Gibbs, running back. They held everybody else relatively in check, but Amon-Ra St. Brown got, in terms of
12 yards.
In terms of outdueling Justin Jefferson on the day.
Targeted 8 times, completed all 8.
Yeah, and Jared Goff, 3 incompletions on the day?
Yeah. 3
incompletions on the day. Sam Darnold only had 5. I mean, both quarterbacks I thought played well for the most part. I know you mentioned the interception from Sam Darnold, but I thought that was a great play by Brian Branch. But I thought that was just a terrific leaping throw. The throw was late. But
the throw's late, which allowed Branch to cut him off.
I thought Branch,
which allowed him to jump.
Great instincts, great player by a great defensive player.
You sound like a Vikings coach tonight.
Oh, yeah,
I
right.
mean,
Yeah,
he's like, well, the other team can make good plays as well once in a while.
I mean,
this is who
it's
are
true.
you?
It's true, though.
You should be like, you need to be more physical than your opponent. Get in the Lion's face.
But that's what I did.
Do not let Dan Campbell bite your kneecap off.
But that's what I
Get
was
in
saying.
there and do it. Yeah, but you're not concerned though, because you're like, well, we're 5-1. We're fine, and we're in a good spot.
I didn't say that they were fine, but I mean, being 5-0, okay. If I told you at the beginning of the season after
that's the oldest line.
Okay.
That's the oldest line.
Okay, then. I mean, you know what? You're gonna shake your head after losing to the Lions, and again, there's no shame in losing the way you lost today. However, I would like to see the team get a little more physical. That's true.
All right. Well,
I would.
I think the
you
defense,
sound like the sky's falling. Like,
well, no,
I thought I was the lunatic on this show, and you're the reasonable guy.
Let's get into Sam Darnold.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I was the one that said to extend him.
Yeah.
Right. So you have a chip and a chair and a chance, as Paul Allen would say on his radio show, to trade him, get something for him at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. He hasn't looked very good since the Packers game, the first half.
Yeah.
The Jets game, no touchdowns.
Yeah.
Today, 1 touchdown. The offense hasn't been winning these games for them. They've been steady. The defense.
They've been relatively steady. But yes, I would agree. That's not the reason why they're winning games.
So, Darnold looked really, I don't know what adjective I want to use, discombobulated maybe when he was in London that second half. Mm-hmm. Once Aaron Jones left the game, there was a problem. When Sam Darnold has the time and the opportunity to decide run pass. Last year, this Vikings offense was all Kirk Cousins. If Cousins did not have the game of his life, they were not going to win. They had 0 running game.
Right.
Now with Aaron Jones, the Vikings have the luxury of saying, all right, Sam, you don't have to do, this isn't all on you. We've got enough here that we can run the ball to keep the defense honest. You can throw when you want, not you have to throw all the time.
Right.
And you saw it when Jones was gone in the second half of that Jets game. The offense looked completely different. And then when Darnold had to lead this offense, when they didn't have the luxury of playing with the lead, because this is only the second time all year that they've actually trailed in a football game, the offense didn't look that sharp, especially at the end when you needed more points or to sustain a drive.
I think that's a very fair and astute observation on your part, Jim. For sure.
Clip that, Howard.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Andrew Van Ginkel had a pick 6 in that game against the Jets, isn't that right? And
correct.
That final score was what, 20-17 or 20-14? I forget what it was.
Yeah, I can't think either.
But in terms of if you go back to the second half of the Packer game, the Jets game, and then today the Vikings had another defensive score as well, so that takes 7 points off the board. You're at 22 from today's game against the Lions. 22 is not enough to get it done in the NFL on a weekly basis. It's not. Your defense really has to be completely lights out if you're going to put up 22 points and expect to win a football game in the NFL. So, I think the more you talk about it,
maybe I'm finding an area of concern.
I think Sam Darnold might be coming back down to earth a little bit, but you have to make sure as the coaching staff that if he's falling back down to earth, that the floor has to be a lot higher than everybody else is hoping it needs to be. Because, if you're going to fall, you can't fall very far, because if you do, now you're going to be in real trouble. So, the offense has not looked great, and that's kind of why I don't think, like I said a moment ago, I don't think they're on Detroit's level, because they lack the explosiveness that Detroit has. Detroit's got weapons all over the field. If TJ Hawkinson
Vikings have weapons. You have Jones. You have the best wide receiver in football, Justin Jefferson. You had Addison. You've got a lot of pieces there to work with. You're saying that the Lions skilled players are better than the Vikings skilled players?
Without question. I think it's without question. I don't even think it's relatively close, to be honest with you. I don't think it's any question at all. Jordan Addison.
I think they have a better running back room with Gibbs and Montgomery versus Jones, and then you go to Ty Chandler. I think that's an issue.
If you're talking about it from a pure talent standpoint, Justin Jefferson is the most talented player on the football field. But from a production standpoint, the Lions wide receiver, even though outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, the receiving core didn't get it done today. Sam Laporte is still a very talented tight end. Jameson Williams has got the speed that could take a top off of defense. Jordan Addison doesn't have that type of speed. Jordan Addison's a good route runner, but he doesn't have that type of speed that Jameson Williams has. He just doesn't. So I don't think that I'm not trying to sit here and say that there's no talent on this offense. There is talent, but I don't see an explosive nature to this offense. I think a little bit of that has to do with their quarterback. I think a little bit of that also has to do with the lack of your go-to tight end who hasn't been in any of these games the first 6 weeks of the season. Hopefully they get him back later this week when they take on the Rams. We'll see. But I just don't – the offense – you're right. I think we're kind of in a roundabout way coming back to the same point that there is something just not really clicking well with this offense right now. Right now.
All right. Pro Football Talk, right? This is the interweb, so we can speculate. We love to speculate. Pro Football Talk came out with a story that they think the Vikings are eyeing another quarterback and are going to make a trade before November 5th. The quarterback they're thinking that could come to Minnesota and be a fit, you obviously hadn't read this because you have no idea.
This is news to me.
Matthew Stafford.
Wow. Wouldn't that be something? Wow. Wow. Well, I'm a little lost for words here.
The Rams are their next opponent, so they won't pull the trigger now, but you pull the trigger after Thursday, then you have a longer week. So that you could get him in here. He can have some extensive practice time. He's familiar, obviously, with O'Connell, knows how he works. Rams, they won their second game of the year, but they're not really going anywhere, it appears, at this point.
They won today.
So they may be in a sell now mode to get some more assets. The problem is Vikings have really nothing to share.
That's the thing.
Because they have only 3 picks in next year's draft. At this point, they may get compensation for the signing of Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. That'll be a third round.
But that comes after the season.
Right. That's not available now. You can't trade that now. Yeah. So, obviously, I've caught you off guard. And,
well, no disrespect to Sam Darnold, but I think that would be an upgrade at the position. I really do. I think that would be an upgrade. The only thing that concerns me with Matt Stafford is his age.
He's a Band-Aid. Sorry to interrupt you, but he's a Band-Aid till you get to McCarthy next season.
Yeah,
I don't know the details of how much time he has left. All right, go ahead.
But in terms of if you're going for it now, if you think you have the team that can compete now, I do think that Matt Stafford would be an upgrade to Sam Darnold. I don't know how you could do that to Sam Darnold after all he's done for you so far this season. But I mean, it is a cold-blooded business, and this would be a cold-blooded move. But like you said, where are the assets to try to get him? You'd have to trade your first-round pick next year, and you're left with what? 2 fifth-round picks? That's all they got, a first-round pick and 2 fifth-round picks as of right now.
Right.
As of right now. So, and if I'm the Rams, I'm absolutely
give him Sam Darnold.
Well, fine. I mean, I would imagine that he probably would be part of that trade. But if I'm the Rams, I'm not trading Matthew Stafford for anything less than a first-round pick or at minimum 2 second-round picks. I'm not trading him. Why would I? And on top of it, too, if Matt Stafford comes to Minnesota, I'm starting. The thought of it actually has me a little intrigued. Wouldn't that be something? I think that would be a very interesting fit here with the Vikings. Like you said, he already knows the offense.
They keep him through 2026. Just Googled it, as you all can see what I'm doing here.
Okay, so through the 2026 season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well you've got Matthew. Now you're in a money situation. Yeah. That's a big money situation.
I know you guys can't read this, but his cap hit for 2024, $46,000.
But the Vikings will have room next year,
right?
The Vikings will have room next year. But then what do you do with J.J. McCarthy? Did you not draft him at 10
he's
overall?
only signed through 26.
No, but my question is, did you not?
He's on a rookie deal.
Did you not just spend the 10th overall pick?
All right,
to have him be your franchise quarterback? You're not wasting. You're not just going to throw away the 10th overall pick, the 10th overall pick, and a potential future quarterback just to bring in Matt Stafford, who's what, 38? How old is he now? 36. 36 years old.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of tread on the tire, or not that much tread on the tire left, I would have to say, for him. So. A guy he's another guy who could be one hit away from having his career ended as well.
Everybody is.
But so I don't know if the talent intrigues me. The move itself, I don't know how really that gets done.
Well, let's take the logistics out of it because, again, we don't know what Rob Brzezinski can do money-wise to make this fit. You know, if the Rams keep some of the money or whatever, how they work that. Let's just take the quarterback, the piece. All right, you're saying you're worried more about McCarthy in the future. This franchise has been to a Super Bowl in 40-some years. All of a sudden, everything's come together. Yes, the Vikings are ahead of the curve. No one expected them to be 5-0. You said to me, you'd take 5-1 after 6 games,
sure
correct?
Would.
Absolutely. Well, now you move the field goals. Now you move the posts. They're farther out now. Now we're not just looking to be a 500 team. We're looking to get to the playoffs. We're looking to go deep in the playoffs. So if this is starting to cave around Darnold, are you just going to let it float away downstream?
No, I don't think you can. My question is if you make this trade, if you are really thinking about trading for a guy like Matt Stafford, if the Vikings pull off a trade for Matt Stafford, in your opinion, in your mind, does Matthew Stafford make the Minnesota Vikings a Super Bowl contender this year?
Well, he's already won one. He is very familiar with O'Connell. He knows this offense. He should know it. I don't think I'm sure he's changed some things, but I'm sure he would be very familiar with it. He has been able to play in pressure situations where Darnold has not in his career to this point. And if you have a window here where Aaron Jones is just under a 1-year contract, you have a lot of pieces. A lot of those Viking defensive players are a 1-year contract. Harrison Smith probably going to be gone at the end of this year. That whole group of the secondary, Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, they're all on 1-year deals back there. There's a lot of pieces, but look at what the Vikings did this year with building on the fly. So I don't know.
So is that a yes?
Is that a yes?
Is that a yes or a no?
I would, if it doesn't kill the future, if you could figure out a way to get him without giving up that first, I don't know what else you do, 2028 first
well,
or
players
something.
would have to be involved.
Yeah, or something. We got a great practice squad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pieces there that I'm sure the Rams would like. But if they could figure out a way where it does not kill the future, you bring him in here, and all of a sudden you have a quarterback winning, a Super Bowl winning quarterback under center. And because you're in a division now where as fast as they got out, now with this loss, they're tied with Detroit. Green Bay's a half game back. The Bears are a full game back. All of a sudden, it's going to get real claustrophobic, and you can fall out of this quickly.
And when you look at the big picture of the division itself, too, when you mention all those other teams, who's the 4th best starting quarterback in that division?
It's Darnold
now. And it's Darnold. It's Darnold. I shouldn't say it's not close because I think Caleb Williams still has a learning curve ahead of him in Chicago, but boy, has he looked good the last month. He really has played very well for the Chicago Bears. So I think when you're looking at, the rest of the division, and if you're trying to keep pace with the division with how things are shaping up right now, an upgraded quarterback in terms of talent, why wouldn't you start to think about it? Why wouldn't you? All
right, so that's something. Comments, let's see down below. You can rip me for this idea. Remember, it came from Pro Football.
It's not your idea. Yeah, it's not your idea.
Mine was to sign
idea.
Darnold to an extension so you could use him to get something. I'm still going with that one because he has shown a lot this season and has shown that he is not a bust. He is a serviceable quarterback. Can he get to that next level? That's the question from here on out.
I just think it's a little bit of a pipe dream. I don't think the Vikings have the proper assets in order to get a move like that done. I don't see a pathway to Matthew Stafford being a member of the Vikings.
No, and it's over my intelligence factor to figure out what that pathway would be. All right, so you look at this team overall and what happened today. You're not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater at this point, but there are some things that need to be addressed. Those 5 consecutive series that Flores defense, and those were long drives. They were not short fields. They were long drives. I think 69 yards was the shortest drive that they got a touchdown out of. Is there enough out there? Did the Packers show something in those second half comebacks? And now the Lions looked at that tape and said, you know what? Here's how we could get to this defense.
think the secondary play is something that you kind of have to keep an eye on. Stephon Gilmore, I thought, had a little bit of a tough time at times today. I don't think he was as terrible as some people were making him out to be online today. But I think listen, if you get, as long as you have your guys up front, that front seven, and they're consistently getting pressure to the quarterback, which the Vikings have done all season long. They were third in the league in sacks going into today's game. That's going to make that secondary look a lot better. However, if you
can't get home.
Exactly. If you can't get home, and if you have a team like Detroit that's able to handle blitz pickup as well as they did today, then suddenly you're looking a little more exposed in the back end. So I think that's something that I am also looking a little bit closer at in terms of, okay, guys, if I'm going to leave you on an island, can I rely on you? If I'm Brian Flores, if I'm going to leave you on an island outside, can I rely on you to get the job done? I think when you look ahead, I think we have to talk about this. When you look ahead to the next 4 games, I don't know how much they're really going to be tested all that much either, because you have the Rams on Thursday night, then you have Indianapolis, and then at Jacksonville, and I forget who the 4th game is, but that's the 4th game on that schedule there is one that I don't think is going to be all that tough. We might as well pull it up now.
Sure,
at Tennessee. At Tennessee.
This computer thing is awesome.
3 of those 4 games are on the road. 1 is on a short week. So I'm not taking anything for granted. But when you look at the Rams, the Colts, the Jags, and the Titans in consecutive order, at worst, this team should be 3-1 out of that stretch and be 8-2 overall after 10 games. At worst. At worst. So it almost feels like the schedule is giving them a little bit of a Band-Aid in and of itself.
Well, this was the softest part on paper at the start of the year that we all looked at when we all went through this and said, wow, 6-7 wins is maybe attainable.
Yeah.
And this would be the part that they would pick up most of that.
Yeah. So this, like I said, I think maybe those deficiencies that we're talking about and we're looking at now can be masked in those games against teams that don't have a lot of offensive firepower. But when you get to the later part of the season and you have to play Green Bay again, and you have to play Detroit again, you have to play Chicago twice still, and then when you eventually talk about the postseason getting into the playoffs, are we going to look back in the end and think to ourselves, well, this was kind of a paper tiger all along? Especially when you look at the competition that they played in this middle portion of the season, in some parts of the earlier part of the season. Was it really that good all along? I think schematically, they're still fine. I think schematically, Brian Flores will figure it out and they're going to be fine. But in terms of a talent, especially on your boundary corners, is Father Time starting to play a little bit of a role here with these two guys? Or they're losing a step a little bit? Are some of these young receivers that are so dynamic in this league going to take advantage of them later on, like Amon-Ra St. Brown did today? That's, I think, the conversation that we need to start having as these weeks roll on.
Yeah, they have to make hay here because the end of the season ends with you at Seattle, Green Bay here, and then at the Lions.
Yeah.
So wins at the end of the season could be difficult to come by. You want to go into that with some cushion if possible.
And those games later in the season, especially against Green Bay and Detroit, those could determine whether or not you're hosting a playoff game.
Without a doubt. Or if you get in.
Or if you get in at all. Sure.
There could 4 teams from this division. Yep. I don't think 4 teams from a division have gone to the playoffs.
Not to my recollection. Not to my 3. I remember 3, but not 4.
Yeah.
Not 4.
That would be pretty crazy to say the least on what this team does, what they could do from here. You look at what comes ahead for the Vikings, this Rams game. Short week, so we can give you a little bit of what they look like. How important is a healthy Aaron Jones in this next game?
Everything. He is. When Aaron Jones has a good game, and he had a good game today, but I mean, when Aaron Jones plays and plays well, this team's win probability just soars. It soars. So, I mean, for him, especially when you're on the road in a short week, if you can establish the run early and control the clock early, that is only going to work to your benefit, because if you can get up to an early lead, like today, if you can get out to a 10-point lead in LA, with the way this Rams offense is, without Cooper Kupp, without Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp sounded like he could have possibly played today, wasn't ready to go. Is he going to be ready to go on Thursday? That will add another element to the offense. But right now, this Rams offense, the only player that scares me right now with this Rams offense is Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams has been arguably the best back in football this year, he's been terrific for the Rams. He's been terrific. But the Rams as an offense as a whole right now with the injuries don't really scare me. So if you can get out to a 10, 14-point lead early on and allow your defense to sit back, pin their ears back, and really play that kind of controlling style that allows you to take a little bit of risk when you have a 14-point lead and get a little more aggressive, I think that's where the Rams could be had this Thursday in Los Angeles.
All right, that'll do it for us. Where can we find this show? If you just happen to stumble across a clip or don't really know that it's out there every week after Viking games, so that means we got to do some late night Thursday work, by the way.
Do we?
Sweet.
Well, okay, I guess that's
we'll
true.
be here. We'll be here for the masses.
All right, fair enough.
Where can they find this?
You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. And then, of course, you can also find us on the Fox 9 YouTube page. That's really where we do the majority of our damage, as far as I'm told.
And Fox Local as well. You can see that. Vikings postgame tonight, Sunday nights at 10:35 with Pete Bursich. So then you get some actual intelligent Viking analysis and not us rambling here. And it's always entertaining with Pete. One last thing. Oh, your X handle is?
Oh, you can find me on X at the Nuge Fox 9, Nouj Fox 9.
All right, load us up with some comments. We read them. We may chime in. We'll see if they're
I don't read them. Jim reads them. I don't.
And then I
read
tell
them.
him. So he knows too.
Yeah,
so if you want to talk to him, I'll let him know what you said. All right, that'll do it for us. The Vikings suffer their first loss of the year. They lose to the Detroit Lions. 31-29 is your final.